Today, we're going to talk about a very serious and controversial self-defense shooting that happened and why I don't necessarily agree with the concealed carrier in this case, but I'm going to tell you why I believe the grand jury actually let this guy off. Now, I think we're going to be able to learn a lot from this, and of course, you may agree or disagree with my opinion. Whatever it is, let me know down below after the video. If you like what I do, consider subscribing. Let's go and get into it. Now, this happened in Southwest Houston. This was January 5th of 2023 at an El Ranchito Taqueria restaurant, and it was like 11:30 p.m., right? So very late at night. And the first thing I want you to notice is just how quickly this happens, right? It's late at night, you're not expecting it, and all of a sudden somebody walks in with a gun. Now, I find it fascinating when we look at how everybody responded because they're so wildly different. You look at the top left hand of your screen, that guy puts his hands up instantly. He's like, nope, I don't want nothing to do with this. Basically saying, hey, nothing's worth my life. I just want you to leave, essentially. I'll give you whatever you want. The robber walks up to another guy, and he's eating, and he's like, very little expression from what we can tell. And it's basically, I get the impression this guy is like, hey, leave me the hell alone. I'm just trying to eat. Other people kind of run for cover. Others hide under the table, right? I don't know that there's necessarily a wrong or a right way to respond to these situations, and I don't think any of us can really say exactly how you're going to respond if you've never been put in that situation. So that is important, and I'm not passing judgment on any of these people, but one thing I do notice instantly is that our concealed carrier reaches for that pistol. Everything registers in his mind, I would say relatively quickly considering the circumstances. Now, of course, the armed robber doesn't see him reach for the pistol. So we see the robber go from table to table. He's taking money. At one point, he has his back turned to at least three people. He also puts his head down for a minute when he realizes he's dropping some of the cash on the ground. What this tells me right here is this guy was looking for an easy target, and he thought this El Ranchito Taqueria was going to be the soft target that he needed for the night to steal his money and just go on about his business. He had zero awareness of what was going on behind him at all. When he walks in, he doesn't see that a guy is instantly reaching for something in his waistband. So that definitely comes to the benefit. I mean, that is the benefit of our concealed carrier here. As soon as this guy passes the table of our concealed carrier, he fires 4 shots into him. Now, depending upon where you're watching this video, if it's on Headshot Nation, you're getting the whole thing unedited. If it's on YouTube, I'm sorry guys, I can only show you a freeze frame, right? I can't show you the whole thing, otherwise people aren't going to see this video. That's YouTube's rules, not mine. So I just want you to be aware of that. I apologize for that. But either way, as soon as the robber passes the table, armed robber, 4 shots. Now, if I'm looking at this from a grand juror or a juror's perspective, and this is just my opinion, I'm going to see these first 4 shots as justified. We don't know if this robber has intentions on making more rounds. He still has his gun, obviously, pointed up. How are we supposed to know that this guy isn't going to turn around before he gets to the door and eliminate everybody in the restaurant? We just don't know. But then our concealed carrier proceeds to fire another 5 shots, and the whole time we don't see the armed robber move really at all. He doesn't go to reach for the gun again or anything like that. Now, I will say that the concealed carrier, by taking the gun away from the robber, getting that away from him, I thought was a good thing. But then even after he takes the gun away, he fires 1 more round into the guy. Now, after shooting this initial video, I actually found another that gives us some even more context to this entire situation and helps support what I'm about to say that some of you may agree or not agree with. But either way, our concealed carrier found out that the gun the robber was using was actually fake. And our concealed carrier was visually upset, calling the guy stupid, or what a stupid decision to walk into a restaurant with a fake gun, knowing that you're in Texas where people are carrying. It was not a smart decision. Another thing that was interesting is he took the money from the robber, gave it back to the people in the store, but then he left the scene of the crime. That's something you never, ever want to do. Just a heads up there. It's always best if you are ever involved in a situation like this. Obviously, calling the police, you got to let them know, but also not telling them anything right off the rip. Understand that what just happened, you got to process all this. You got to talk to a lawyer too, because you don't want to incriminate yourself. So, letting the police know simply, hey, I'm going to cooperate with you guys 100%, but I got to calm myself down and I also have to talk to my lawyer because I don't want to say anything to incriminate myself. It turns into what I see as a clear-cut self-defense situation to like a crime of passion almost, right? Like this guy, knew him personally, right? You see that level of intensity. Now, I mean, there's so many ways to look at it, right? And I I just don't know if anybody even justified. We know this is a justified shooting, right? We absolutely see that. But after those first 4 shots, I would never recommend, never, ever, ever, any concealed carrier out there. If you have the person that is trying to take your life, if they are incapacitated, that's where I say you stop, right? I don't know if you can justify any more shots at that point, especially the last one. I think that's probably the most egregious one if I had to judge that. Now, again, I wasn't there, right? I've never been in that situation, and I hope to God none of us are. But at the same time, I think this is so important to kind of see how these things could escalate, right? Now, the grand jury looked at this and they didn't go forward with the indictment. Grand jurors have like a 95 to 99% chance of coming back to the prosecutor with that indictment. It's basically saying, all right, a jury of 12 of your peers are going to look at this case only from the prosecutor's side. So you can never depend upon a grand juror to actually, do the right thing. They're basically only getting information from one side of the law. Now, that doesn't mean that you're guilty or innocent, but it just means they have enough to go forward with this case. And of course, that's when, your defense and y'all will, go through the whole trial process. But this grand jury said, hey, we think this guy is justified, and they didn't go forward with the indictment, which is crazy, right? When you look at the video and if you see what I'm seeing, it looks like overkill at that point. Now, every state is different, and that's why you always have to look at the laws in your state or places you're traveling to. If you are defending your property, like let's say you're in your car, you're going to work, well, Castle Doctrine specifically will protect you in your vehicle. It is an extension of your home. If you're in a stand your ground law state, right? That says that you have the right to use force up to deadly force if you are in fear of your life or somebody else around you, a loved one, whatever. And you have no duty to retreat first. So all those things are fantastic. But let's say somebody is like trying to steal your car and it's unoccupied. Well, if you yell at that person and they turn around and they have a gun pointed on you, there you go. That is justified if you use deadly force. But if they don't, if they just hop in the car and drive away, you can't be shooting at them. Or if they rob you and then, let's say they steal your TV out of your home and, they run away out the back or whatever. It's not a funny situation, but, let's just say they're running off with your 60-inch TV. However, that's, going to happen these days. But you can't just shoot them, right? They're running away. If they're no longer a threat, that's where you're going to have to let the law get involved to hopefully return that property. Now, does that mean that every jury would say that you're guilty for shooting said assailant in our made-up situation if they run away with your property? No, not necessarily. They may say that you were totally justified. But you're leaving a lot of that up to a jury. I think the biggest thing I want you to take away from this, or the biggest thing in my opinion with this specific situation, is the camera, right? The camera showed what happened prior to the events of this, during, and after. And I believe what they saw was a guy still holding a gun, still a major threat, and this dude responded in the only way that he knew possible. I mean, and he just kept firing to make sure that this guy wasn't going to eliminate anybody inside of this restaurant. I think the camera and that footage is what ultimately saved this guy. let's say there was no camera and they just went off of witnesses. Well, this guy just saved the entire restaurant. That's what he did, right? Let's say one of those witnesses says, yeah, he shot him initially and then he shot him 5 more times while he was on the ground. If you have no video to kind of back up what's going on, right, a prosecutor could look at that and say, hey, you crossed the line right there. I guess the biggest thing I'm trying to say is you can't always depend upon other people or witnesses, but you also can always depend upon a clear-cut video helping to prove your innocence. You know, making sure that if you have to use your gun in self-defense, that it is totally justified. And I understand, again, I wasn't there, I've never been in this situation, and I hope none of us are. But if you're in those situations, maybe learning from things like this will help you to recognize when you can use deadly force, when you may want to hold off, when maybe just the sight of a gun, like we've talked about in some of these other ones, not this one specifically, but sometimes the sight of a gun will disperse people away from you. Training, and I think looking at these videos and kind of seeing these different scenarios, I believe is probably more helpful than anything else I've done on this channel. And I've done a lot of concealed carry pistols and conversations, videos, all that, but seeing it is a whole nother thing. And I believe this guy was justified all the way up to those 4 shots, but fortunately he had the video, and whatever that grand jury saw in that video, they said, hey, we're not going forward with the indictment because we believe this guy, it may have been overboard, but he was trying to protect himself and the people around him. You just can't always depend on that. Let me know what you think, though. If you disagree or agree with my opinion, let me know what you think about this case specifically. If you know of any others, hit me up on Headshot Nation. Send me a message over there if you want me to cover any self-defense cases specifically. I'd love to accommodate you guys. That's what that whole site is all about, for us to communicate and for the communities, both communities on YouTube, to come together. Big thanks to you guys. See you in the next one. And as always, hold them down.